Hello there, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to dive into the really fascinating world of city planning. We're going to break down the blueprint that can turn, a simple collection of streets and buildings into a place where people can really, truly thrive. So let's explore what it takes to build a better city. So here's our plan for today. First, we'll get a handle on what city planning even is. Then, we'll look at three super important parts: education, healthcare, and transportation. And finally, we'll see how it all fits together to make a city that just works. But before we get into all that, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a city and just thought, wow, this place is so easy to live in? Or maybe the opposite, where getting to work is just a total nightmare? Well, the answer to why that is almost always comes down to planning. Okay, let's jump right into our first section. What in the world is city planning? You can really think of it as the master blueprint for how a city grows and how it operates day to day. So, what it really boils down to is this. Urban planning is all about strategically organizing a city's spaces and services. And the goal? Well, it's pretty simple, but it's also incredibly powerful: to improve the quality of life for every single person living there. And when it's done right, a city doesn't just function, it flourishes. That's such a great word. It means it's not just about getting by, it's about thriving and becoming this busy, energetic hub of activity, both economic and social. Right, so to flourish means to grow in a really healthy, strong way. A flourishing city is one that's just full of life. It's got a strong economy, a vibrant social scene. It's the kind of place people really want to live. So how do we get a city to flourish? Well, modern planners really focus on three key things, three essential pieces of the puzzle: making sure there's easy access to education, providing vital healthcare services, and building a smart, integrated transportation network. We're going to look at each one of these. All right, let's start with that first pillar, planning for education. This is all about making sure every student has a fair shot and an equal opportunity to succeed. The main idea here is really just about fairness. The goal of educational planning is to make sure that where you live, your zip code, doesn't decide how good your school is. It's about giving everyone the same access and the same opportunities. So how do they do that? Well, it's a process that's driven by data. First, planners consult huge amounts of information. Then, they use that data to gain insight. And finally, with that insight, they establish or, set up schools in the best possible locations. And that second step, gaining insight, that's so important. It's about getting a really deep understanding. By looking at all this data about population and community needs, planners get that deep understanding they need to make smart choices about where to put schools. And that insight leads to real action. Planners worked to distribute schools evenly throughout different neighborhoods, and they designed systems that can accommodate not just the students we have now, but future students too. The result is a huge benefit: shorter commutes, which means more time for learning, for homework, for hobbies. Okay, on to our second vital component, planning for a city's health. This is all about making sure that medical care is there for you, when, and where it matters most. And just like we saw with schools, the big idea here is even distribution. The goal is to spread out hospitals and clinics so that no neighborhood gets left behind. Everyone deserves to have quality medical care that's not too far away. And the location of these facilities is absolutely crucial. When they're placed strategically, it guarantees easy access to a doctor, it allows for a much faster response in an emergency, and it even encourages people to go for checkups and preventative care, which keeps the whole city healthier. And when we say something is crucial, we mean it's extremely important, absolutely necessary. In healthcare planning, getting the location right isn't just a nice to have. It is an essential factor that can literally save lives. All right, let's talk about our final pillar, transportation. Because a great city has to keep its people moving, right? And it has to do it efficiently and safely. This slide here shows a comparison I think we can all relate to. On the one side, you've got the old systems, congested, traffic-jammed streets and routes that just don't make sense. But on the other side, modern systems use integrated technology to build something way better: streamlined routes and enhanced traffic flow. So when we say streamline, what we mean is to make a system more effective and more efficient. By using data, modern cities can streamline traffic, which really just means getting people where they need to go faster, and with a whole lot less stress. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, technology can warn drivers about a traffic jam before they even get to it. It can automatically adjust traffic lights to keep things moving smoothly. And cities can establish totally new options, like Taipei's super popular U-Bike system, giving people greener, healthier ways to get around.
Okay, so in our final section, let's bring it all together. Let's see how these different parts, education, healthcare, and transportation, all combine to create a city that actually works for the people who live there.
So the biggest takeaway here is that these three components aren't separate things. They're all deeply connected and they are all equally vital. You need all three for a city to function well and for its people to have a really high quality of life. And that brings us to this really powerful final thought. Their importance to a city's success cannot be overestimated. Now, to overestimate something means you think it's more important than it really is. So what this quote is saying is that it's impossible to do that here. You can't overstate how important these things are. They are just that crucial. And so that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. When you look at your own town or your own city and you think about everything we've talked about, education, healthcare, transportation, what is the one change you think would help your city truly flourish? Thank you so much for joining us on The Explainer.